Hey everyone, this is Carla Black coming to you from Austin, Texas. Welcome to another episode of Highly Unorthodox, the series that takes you behind the scenes of the Netflix hit TV show Unorthodox. Today I'll be speaking with Abby Stein, the author of Becoming Eve. She also played an extra on Unorthodox, and she actually came from a community similar to Satmar. We'll be asking her all about that experience and what life has been like for her since she left. So let's jump in. So Abby, welcome to Highly Unorthodox. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, Carla, and thank you for having me. I feel like I already know you from being on the Facebook group. Well, I'm impressed with everything you've done with the Facebook group. The Facebook group has been, in my opinion, a huge success.
Well, it is funny because I did have to delete somebody who was a jerk to you.
Oh, that happened?
But normally, how did you get onto Unorthodox? And was that filmed in New York or was that filmed in Berlin?
So I've known Ellie Rosen, who was the cultural consultant at some of Yiddish translations, or all of them. And he also plays the Rabbi. So I have known him for 8 years. He was one of the first people I got to know as I was leaving the community when I was still married, still living in a Hasidic community. I think he was a bit further in his journey than me, but we left together around the same time. And I've known him ever since. And he is an amazing person. So you mentioned something that he's working on a show. I don't think obviously he was allowed to give more details. I learned more about it. Last summer, I was in Berlin for a few events. So actually I did a few weeks in Germany. I traced my grandfather's great-grandfather, so my great-great-great-grandfather's grave in Mannheim, in a cemetery in Mannheim in Germany. And no one in my family has been at his grave for about 100 years, since World War I. And then I was in Berlin and I did several events, including a big event with Keshet Deutschland, which is a Jewish LGBT group in Germany. As I was there, and I knew that Ellie was there filming, so I just messaged him, let's hang out. And he was like, come on set. And apparently Anna and Alexa both already knew about me. I don't know if they saw it in the media or if Ellie told them, but they knew about me and they really wanted to meet. So I went on set. I spent a few days on set in Berlin. I didn't do anything direct. I wasn't on screen, other than every now and then, Ellie would just would casually consult, not that he needed my help necessarily, but it was fun to be should we do that expression or that expression? And so I ultimately end up low key, unofficially consulting on a few expressions here and there. And that's also when I got to know everyone. I pretty much met everyone then, and then became friends with Shira and Amit and Jay, the whole crew. The entire show, almost the entire show, was filmed in Berlin. Even the scenes that are set in Brooklyn, only the outsides in Brooklyn were actually filmed in Brooklyn. So they told me that they're looking for extras, and ideally they would love people who speak Yiddish. So obviously they were not going to go and teach all the extras Yiddish, but it would be cool if we could converse in Yiddish. So I was thinking about it, and I'm sure, why not? I don't do acting necessarily. I tried it a long time ago for a while. It's just not for me. I'm filming a documentary right now. When I'm asked to do something twice, I get annoyed. I can't do a show where you do 10 takes at minimum for every scene. Play an extra. The dressing up part was a bit of an interesting journey for me. I'm in 2 scenes. In one scene, I'm just a married Hasidic woman, and one scene, a pregnant married Hasidic woman. Yes. And it was very interesting. There was one scene that they were planning that I might be guilty that they cut it out, because they were talking about 2 different outfits and then an outfit for the cemetery. There was a plan to do a cemetery scene. I'm not really sure what it was going to be about, but it was a plan to do a cemetery scene in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And they started planning about black clothes for the women. And I tell Ellie we're 2 problems. First, that Hasidic people don't necessarily have the whole custom of wearing black to funerals or to cemeteries. And the other thing is that the custom in Hasidic communities is that women don't go to the cemetery at funerals. That is to this day. I remember my grandfather's funeral. Women don't go to the cemetery. They're part of the funeral, but not in the cemetery. And they decided to cut the scene. So sorry about that, everyone.
Do you remember who that was for? Was that for Bubby?
I'm trying to remember.
Because that's the only person I can think of who actually died.
I think it's totally fine if they would have decided to go with an artistic license and do a scene, but I guess it wasn't that important, so they just cut it.
Interesting.
So usually Ellie picked up on most of these things anyway, but it was always cool to hear, like, at least Ellie, at least he pretended to love my input. I think he really did, but it was just interesting to get to like give some input from having actually grown up in Williamsburg.
Before you left the community, did you know people who had left?
Well, I wasn't in touch with anyone, if that's what you mean, but I knew people have left. Specifically, the one person that I know a lot about was Loser Tversky. I don't know if you know who he is. He's also an actor. He's one of the 3 people that has followed in One of Us in the documentary that's also on Netflix. So he's my second cousin. Ironically, when I got married, he was actually my first cousin. So I sometimes tell people he's my second cousin. He's actually also my third cousin to our grandparents. And my ex-first cousin, his mom, my ex-mother-in-law are sisters. And another one of their sisters is married to my mother's brother on my mom's side. I always tell people I don't have a family tree. I only have a bush. I mean it. My family history is quite intense, so to speak. So I knew about him leaving. He was the first person in my extended family to leave, and it was a really big deal. And we were told every negative thing you can only imagine. I was told everything from he is a criminal, he's mentally ill, he's just very into materialistic stuff and he can't control himself, he's a drug addict, like literally, which are, none of these are accurate, but that's all the things that we're told about him. And I actually use that a lot as an example though, because for me, regardless of what my family was telling me about him, the knowledge that what he did told me that that was possible. And I think a lot about the fact that I grew up in a community where trans people didn't exist. And I didn't know that there's other people who feel what I'm feeling. And I set out on a mission. Like one of my earliest missions after I came out was to change that, which I think is by now mission accomplished, because the Hasidic community, whether they want to or not, is forced to face the fact that we exist. I was the first person who grew up Hasidic to come out as trans. I was by far not the last one. There have already been a few people who came out after that, which is extremely powerful. And I am partially being blamed, and I partially will totally take the credit for them coming out. But one of the biggest things is that I wanted to make sure that children or teenagers in that community know that they are not alone and know that that is possible. Now, I'm not stupid. I don't think that the Hasidic community is telling them that, oh, this person left and now she is happy and she is amazing. They are probably coming up with every negative thing they can, but at least they're talking about it. And that is extremely powerful. I think the same thing with this show that makes it so powerful from an activist point of view, which is how I look on things a lot, is the fact that it's creating a conversation that needs to be had. Positive or negative, that's a separate conversation, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. And a show like these, or every time one of us go on TV, or every time we make waves, intentionally or unintentionally, it has that extremely positive impact.
Are there people like Moshe that come after people who leave and try to bring them back?
Oh, every extended family has a Moshe.
Wow. Because my favorite line is, there's always a Moshe.
Well, there's different levels of a Moshe. I mean, from what, obviously the show doesn't go into that much in his backstory, but from what we are told, looks like he had a while where he wasn't religious at all. There's even more people who are like, for a while they're like in limbo in between. They are, you would call them bummis, or in Yiddish we would say aufgeklärt, which just means kind of enlightened, which growing up was a negative thing, but now when you think about it, it's actually a positive thing to be enlightened. But yes, they are characters like that in every family.
Did somebody try to come after you and bring you back?
Oh, yeah. Well, not a character like that. The bigger struggle that they have with me is that no one was expecting it. A lot of people who leave are people who start out with like doing small things, and people know that they're like, we would say that they're feigelich in cup. They, they have like ideas, they're like whatever, more open and like, so with people like that, that's a more, they know how to deal with it. Everyone who leaves has their own story. There's no one size fits all. But if you had to, you could probably divide into 2 main categories. People who don't fit in for a host of reasons, which could be anything from The learning culture is not for them. The strictness is not for them. They've been abused emotionally or physically. There's a whole long list of things. And then you have people who leave for ideological reasons. And obviously there's a lot of overlap, and this is not clear cut. But when someone leaves for ideological reasons, they usually don't use people like Moshe, because what is Moshe going to do? It wouldn't work.
Right.
They would use rabbis, which they were a lot, and sometimes also scary tactics. My phone was blocked for a long time. The first time I went to watch a movie, for example, I was terrified to go to the theater because you're not allowed to go. Right. And the big problem also was that I lived in Muncie at the time, and the big theater was AMC at Palisades Mall. And there's a lot of Hasidic people in Palisades Mall. And there are Hasidic people who watch movies also, but these are usually people who are married, and, you know, no one is going to do anything about that. But for me, who was supposed to be a good student, that would be a huge giveaway if I was seen going to watch a movie that something is going on. Mm-hmm. So a friend of mine told me, here's a great idea. Let's go on Saturday afternoon, Shabbos afternoon. No one is going to see you then. And I went on Shabbos afternoon. The first movie I ever watched was Magic Mike. It's not the reason why I'm queer, I promise. They figured out that I was there, which I only after that learned was because I had a kosher phone, so to speak, which is a phone that you take into an organization and they make it kosher. They literally put a seal on it that says kosher, which apparently also gives them direct access to your phone's everything, all the information on your phone if they want to. Someone hired a private investigator to follow me for a while. They really tried these kind of tactics, but it only really work if you are afraid of them.
Right.
The second you start telling them F off, they have nothing to threaten you with.
When you left, where did you go?
I think a lot of people imagine leaving like Esty, like picking up and
living on the streets and hiding.
Yeah, it's not exactly. Thanks to, in a big part to footsteps and a big part to the growing amount, both in numbers and in percentage of people leaving, the reality is that by now, so even when I joined Footsteps and when I was growing up, let's say until around 10 to 8 years ago, almost everyone who left was shunned by their families. Mm-hmm. Now it's almost the other way around. There are people who still, but the majority of people are not fully shunned. So that is really helpful, and that has in big part been because of the awareness, because there's so many people. I think the biggest difference now than 10, 20 years ago is also the shame, because it used to be a huge deal. Like the entire city would talk about, oh my God, did you hear that family, take a genetic Hasidic name, family Schwartz had a kid that left. Now it's like literally every extended family has a few kids that left. We had 40 families on our block, I think, and trying to think almost all of them have at least one child who has either fully left or left halfway. So that has also helped.
When you figure so many of these families have 13, 14 kids, you're bound to have one
or more.
Just, or more that is just not going to.
Exactly. Like in my family, you have me. I have 12 siblings, and you got me that has left. I got another brother who is religious but doing his own thing. He's on social media and watches TV and movies and like whatever, does his own life.
I think it's so interesting that the Hasidic community is a way to keep shtetls, which were ghettos where Jews had to live in seclusion.
Shtetls happened because in specific cities, as opposed to like spread out throughout Eastern Europe, because they weren't allowed to live everywhere.
Right.
But literally every shtetl was mixed. Ghettos only existed in the big cities. In shtetls, you would have Jews living right next to non-Jews.
To relive that is kind of weird. Okay, we want to go back to when we were repressed, and there's nobody to repress us. Therefore, we must do that ourselves.
They have a bit of an ideological belief system also that emancipation wasn't necessarily a good idea. Now they don't say it anymore, but right after the war, there were Hasidic rabbis who openly said that they see equality for Jews as a threat because it leads to assimilation. And whenever we taught that we can just be like everyone else, the message was, which you see a bit at the Seder, in the show, God is like sending a message that you can't. I said the irony about both claiming that the Holocaust happened because of Zionism or because Jews were assimilating, which are both very popular themes in Satmar, is that it's like the state of Israel needed one final push, and that was the Holocaust. Before the Holocaust, only about 50% of Jews were not Orthodox. After the Holocaust, pretty much to this day, 90% of Jews are not Orthodox. So that was God's plan. He is really failing at being God.
It's really been very fun and very enlightening, and you're a very brave person. I know that's been said by many more people than myself.
I didn't have anything specific in mind other than coming in and having a conversation with you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Be well.
Thank you, you too. And I will see you on Facebook.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Highly Unorthodox is brought to you by Texas Hill Country Homes, serving all your residential needs in Central Texas, and created by Carla, empowering your most creative self. Stay tuned next week for another episode of Highly Unorthodox, and don't forget to subscribe.